Hello and welcome to Coffee with Dr. Carla. I'm Dr. Carla and I'm so glad that you're here with me today. And today we're going to talk about some mental health issues and hopefully start to end some stigma around them. So I think one of the biggest stigmas is that you would even get mental health help, right? Like this idea of even seeking out a counselor, there's so much stigma around it. I hear from clients all the time that they tell friends and family that they're seeing a coach, and I kindly remind them that I'm not a coach, and that that would be a misrepresentation of who I am. And they're like, well, we know, okay, but and I get it. You need help, so at least you're getting help, which is awesome. But at the same time, the world doesn't see mental health as being a priority, even though it's more so now. There's still a lot of stigma around it. So I was listening to a podcast, and one of the guests on the podcast was talking about the idea of getting help and staying there, continuing counseling, a lot like dehydration. And as I listened to them talk about it, I was like, oh, well, that's an interesting thing. So I used to run long distances, half marathons, couple full marathons, and the rule of thumb was, as soon as you're thirsty, it's already too late. Like, you should not wait to have a sip of water until you're thirsty. That drinking of water should be happening on a regular basis. And so, and that's basically what this guest was trying to say about counseling, right? About getting help. You shouldn't wait until you need it. It should be something that you start and you use, because times will be, rough, and then this way you can be proactive. So I decided to look up some of the, I guess I'll call it warning signs of dehydration, to see, and not so much like where it's obvious that you're dehydrated, but some signs that perhaps that you wouldn't naturally equate to dehydration. So some of those symptoms are bad breath, hungry, headaches, having your focus off, constipated, grumpy, right? And when I read that, I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. So if we switch the word dehydration to maybe stressors, mental health stressors, what would those signs or symptoms be? Well, okay, maybe not bad breath. Maybe that won't be a tell that there's some mental health stresses going on in your life. But kind of that hungry, crabby, grumpy, headaches, focus off. Okay, maybe not constipated either, but who knows? Maybe that's what happens when you get depressed or anxious. But there is a whole lot more connected when it comes to this idea of dehydration and counseling. And so I think that, when we're irritable, when everything just kind of annoys us, you're not sure why everyone seems to be out to get you, or why does it take why is it so much effort to be able to complete these tasks, right? And while you might not be able to put your finger on it, like maybe you can't find the source of that, maybe it's just these little irritations all along the way, they are definitely signs that you need to do something about your overall mental health, right? So it starts to show up as these small stressors. And I think what happens is that people put off getting help, talking to somebody, because they're like, well, everybody's stressed, everybody has a bad day. Totally true, right? But what happens is that, like dehydration, if I don't notice those signs of being, getting a headache or getting grumpy or being hungry or whatnot, what ends up happening then is that I start to notice other things, where I start to progress to a point where perhaps I'm having a hard time with urination because there's not enough fluids. My skin is cracking and drying. My lips are dry and they're cracking and bleeding, right? And so now this is a little bit worse, right? now let's go a little bit further. Dehydration can then lead to different organs malfunctioning or even failing. And delirium is at the far end of this, right? Where you literally can start to lose your mind. And is that when we wait to take our next drink of water? Or do we do it on a regular basis so that we don't get out of that really beginning stage, right? So if you think about mental health in the same way, if I'm crabby, if I'm a little bit irritable, if I'm noticing the day-to-day stuff is just kind of, I can't, go with the flow, things aren't just rolling off my back, maybe that's the time you start to look for some help, right? Instead of waiting until you're in a full-out rage over something, or you're so depressed that you can't get out of bed, or you're so anxious you can't leave the house, or you and your partner or friend or other family member are in a screaming match. Like, we don't need to wait until it gets to be these horrible things. And when we think about waiting too long in the world of mental health, those aren't even the worst, right? Waiting too long would be where all of a sudden you're like, this is so stupid. Why am I even here? What's the point of living, right? And even that's not the worst, because that's still at a contemplative state for suicide, right? Or that person irritates me so much I just want to kill them. It's still at the contemplative stage. But what if you come up with a plan and you do try to hurt yourself, kill yourself, hurt somebody else, kill somebody else, right? And then say, oh yeah, maybe I should get some help, right? It's way, way too far gone. That doesn't mean you shouldn't get it. Like, if you are that person who's waited that long, then definitely, but that's a 911, right? That's where we have to have, real extreme measures taken to help bring you back into balance, right? The sad part is that if you allow yourself to wait that long, what ends up happening is you end up in a hospital situation, and their one and only job is stabilization. And people think, well, I went to the psych ward in my hospital, or at this hospital or that hospital, and we didn't get any treatment. No, you did not, because that's not their job. Their job is stabilization. Their job is to get you to the point where you're not trying to kill yourself or others. Their job is to get you on medication so that your overall mood can be balanced, because when you are in that state, there's nothing we can do treatment-wise. We have to do all of the triage trauma work first to get you stabilized. And then once you're stabilized, then we can start to say, okay, let's figure out the pattern. Let's figure out what's happening here. Okay, what's going to be the best way to treat this? But if we allow ourselves to go all the way to that end before getting help, we have to go through the stabilization process. And unfortunately, if we let ourselves go too far, our first go around with mental health is a hospital. And a hospital's job is simply to stabilize. And of course, no one leaves there feeling warm and fuzzy. Like, no one wants to go to the hospital, right? But if we can go back to those beginning stages where maybe I'm just a little more irritated with day-to-day stuff than what I normally am, or I'm noticing that certain things are getting to me in ways that they used to be okay, or maybe they didn't bother me in the same way. If you could start then by getting help, that's going to be the best place to go. So if you can think about mental health and dehydration, right? And the other thing is, with dehydration, we don't stop drinking water once we get hydrated, right? So same thing with mental health. Once we find ourselves in a more balanced spot, we don't stop mental health work. We might stop physically going to counseling, but we're going to still put into practice those skills we learned, right? And know that we can go back to that counselor whenever we need to. So, like I'm always preaching, if you need help, reach out to us, to somebody else. There's all sorts of resources online. Just reach out and find somebody who can help you with whatever it is that you're going through. Don't wait until we get to the extremes, and then it just becomes a real crisis, a real 911 situation. So remember, you could change your thoughts, discover your potential, and transform your life by focusing on your overall well-being. So until next time, keep being the best you possible.